Hello and welcome back. In this video I'll be teaching you the different conditional statements that you can do within Python. Now the most important thing with a language is the ability to do a conditional statement, because it allows you to do comparisons, it allows you to do checks, and all of these come down to Boolean expressions, which is whether something is true or false. So the first thing that we need to do is set up two variables, and we're going to call those A and B, have them 0 and 1. And 0 and 1 are just two random numbers. You can use anything you like. You can use strings, you could use integers, you could use floats, you can use anything you want. You can even use Boolean, say, if you choose to. But I'm going to be using numbers because it allows me to demonstrate more things than, say, a string would allow me to demonstrate. So if, and this is the conditional statement which we're going to be using, it's the most powerful one, along with what we're going to cover in the next video, which is else. And if is basically, it checks whether something is equal to true. So if A is equal to B, and then you have to put a colon at the end, and that tells it that the conditional statement has ended and the code block has started. And the code block is just the section of code which gets ran if something is true. So if A is equal to B, then we're just going to print true. And if we run this, you won't get anything printed out. And the reason why nothing's printed out is simply because that is not true. So there is a keyword within Python which you can do to combat this. And if you're looking for something to be false, and it's if not. And here you'll see that it's now being printed out as true, which is what you'd expect. Now, this print could have anything. You can have any code block going on within this. You can have variables changing their value, for example. You can have all sorts of things happening. But we're just going to keep the example here is just going to have printing it as true. So because we have the not, there's also other keywords we can use, such as and or, which I'll demonstrate in a few moments. But if we just delete that, and I'm going to copy and paste this code over a couple of times, and we'll carry on. I'll show you the rest of the demonstrations which you can do with conditional statements. Now you'll notice that this has to be on a new line. If this is not on a new line, if it's indented here, like this, then it will run within this code block. This code block here is set out to be so that all of this code here is ran if this is true. What we want is, if this is true, to run this, and if it isn't true, then it'll carry on moving, and if it is true, it'll run this and then carry on moving. So that is what an if statement does. It executes whatever code is within it, then moves to the next line, executes whatever code is there, and it keeps moving itself down the page. It progresses constantly through the page. So now, because we have checked if something is equal to something, and we've checked if something is not equal to something, we can do that again without using keywords. We can do that by using the exclamation point and the equal sign, and that checks if something is not equal to something else. So you'll see here we get the true outputted again, and that is from the second statement which we've done there. Now, because it's numerical, you can also do less than and greater than, and the way that you do that is just using the standard less than and greater than symbols, and they will both do what you'd expect them to do. However, less than or greater than do not actually cover if something is the same as. So there's two ways in which you could do that. The main way in which you will probably use is if it's greater than or equal to, A is greater than or equal to B, then you'll do that. I'll just put a sentence in here so you can actually see what happens, and if we run that, you'll see nothing is output here, and that is because that is less than, A is less than B. So if we change that amount to less than, you'll see this is true, and that's the output we expect from here. However, what you might have expected, since I mentioned before about the not, and or keywords, is if we had is equal to, or if A is greater than B, then that should be less than. If A is less than B, then if we run that, we get the exact same output. So that shows that less than and equal to are the same operator. So that is exactly the same as how it was before, the other way of writing it. And again, there's the opposite, which is greater than or equal to. Now, you have to remember that if you were to do equals and then greater than, so if you were to do a symbol like that, it would not work. You cannot have it set out in the opposite direction because it just simply will not run. That doesn't mean anything within Python. It has to be greater than or equal to and less than or equal to. So it has to be in the order in which you would say it. The next one that we have is whether or not two things are equal, and that is the AND keyword. So if this and B is greater than 1, then what you'd expect here is a true. However, a true does not appear because B is equal to 1. If we set B equal to 2, then you'd get... Okay, and this isn't going to be true either because A is not equal to B. If we put B at 2 as well, then you get another true output here. So, as you can see, there is a whole range in ways to do comparisons within Python, and these are the main methods in which you will be able to do it. I recommend that if you can avoid not using the AND, or, and not keywords, to avoid it. However, the AND keyword, there isn't a way to avoid that. You have to use that if you want to compare two things. However, OR, there's quite often a way in which you can avoid it. If there isn't, then obviously it's fine to use it, and just make sure that you use it properly and use it at the right points in the statement. All operators and operands must be together. So, and this is an operator, and this is an operand. No, sorry, this is an operand, and these are operators. And altogether, this makes something called an opcode. And all opcodes must be complete. So it must be equal to true or false, because that is how an if statement works. So this here, if we hover over, you can find that this is true. If we hover over this one, it says this is true as well. If we hover over this one, this is true. And if we hover over this one, we get this is true. We get a constant output here of where things are true and where things are not true. So it is always worth looking at something to find out whether or not what we are actually outputting is valid. And if it is valid, then you've written your code correctly. However, if it's not valid, then just quickly look over and you'll probably see a mistake, such as if you were to do something, type it quickly, and you had a single equal sign, you'll have something and like this red underline here, where it's not valid code. It simply can't run because a single equal sign means an assignment, not a conditional operator. So make sure that you always have like two equal signs, for example, and that sort of thing. It's quite an easy mistake to make, and it is one that does break your program. So it's easy enough to diagnose and find later. But just make sure that whilst you're typing that you are doing all these operators properly, and that whilst you're using the operators, the best thing to do is to just have it so that you think about things in a logical order. So like I mentioned, for the greater than or equal to and less than or equal to, if you say it in your head, you sort of get the order right, because if you were to do it the wrong way around, it would not work. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. I'm Max Bowers from LearnToProgram.tv, and I'll see you soon.